All right, let's jump in on J.J. McCarthy because there's a full-on happening in Minnesota right now, and it does not look like he's going to answer the bell because his bell was rung. There's already conversation about it's the same thing that happened with his ankle earlier, that he just needs a break. Again, what are you seeing from J.J. McCarthy on film, Kurt?
I did actually a breakdown. So it's on QB Confidential for people that want to go a little bit more in depth and kind of talking about some of the issues. I mentioned it when we had a little conversation on game day morning last week. And I think the first thing is that, sometimes you just come across what I call natural throwers, that it's just natural for them to pick up a football and sling it. Guys like Aaron Rodgers and Patrick Mahomes. And then there's other guys that aren't necessarily natural throwers, that they've worked at it, they're good at it, but they're not natural throwers. And I believe that's where it starts with J.J. McCarthy. I don't believe he's a natural thrower, athletic type thrower. And so the first thing that you're seeing is a lot of inaccuracies when he throws the football. Coming out of Michigan, everything was a fastball, and it was either hit or miss. And that's something that he has to work on. He's got to get better at. So it starts there, I think, with the physical. And then what I talked about in the piece is the mental side of things. And it's a fascinating thing because I don't know the background. I don't know the full details. But you've heard me talk a lot about pure progression type systems. And pure progression type systems, again, for those that aren't familiar, is a play where coach basically designs a play and says, it doesn't matter what coverage you get, doesn't matter what you see. You're going to read this the exact same way. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's how you're going to read it no matter what. And when that happens, because I'm a believer, there's sometimes when you come up and you can have a pure progression play, but I know without a doubt, 1 and 2 aren't going to be open against this coverage. Like, I know it. It's just bad coverage for that concept. For me, I'm wiping those things out and I'm going right to 3, 4, and 5. But in some systems, they don't really allow you to do that. 3, 4, and 5 have a certain timing. So you do have to look at 1 and 2, or at least have to take that same amount of time before you can get to 3 and 4. And so I'm always talk about how I think pure progression can hurt quarterbacks more than it can help them. And so what I'm seeing a lot of times on tape is I believe JJ's hanging on routes way too long. So by the time he gets back to these other routes, he can't see it. He doesn't have a time to verify it, or he's late on those particular routes. And so my question becomes, is JJ slow at processing things? Is he, taking too long to see and determine whether he wants number 1 or number 2 before he gets to number 3? Or is the system dictating him to, you got to see 1. You got to see if 1 comes open. You got to hang here until it gets to the top of the route before you can move on to the next one. And is that causing him to go through things slowly? And so that, to me, is the big question I have with what's going on with Minnesota is it JJ? Is it the system? Is it a combination of both of them that's causing him to play slower than he needs to play? He has got to speed up the processing and get to places quicker. So, if he wants to take a little bit more time to throw the football and wants to be more accurate and wants to slow down his body or his arm, he has the ability to do that. But right now, that is the biggest issue that I'm seeing, is that the processing part of it, or at least getting to where he needs to be, is slow. Is it system related? Is it player related? That, to me, is a question that I'm going to continue to look forward to, as he continues to play throughout the season and in his career. But I think it's a valid point, because I see a number of systems built that way where you can't really speed up your process because these other guys aren't quite ready in their route yet. And it causes a quarterback to play a little bit differently, play a little bit slower, and miss things that, personally, if I was building an offense, I'd say, hey, if you don't like this coverage, we're getting off of that. We're getting right back to this. I'm making it fast. I'm letting you play fast, get the ball out of your hands, and be able to play a little bit more successfully. So that, to me, in a nutshell, is what I'm looking at when I see the Vikings play.
Well, is that why he's taken a lot of sacks, or is it because the offensive line is just not as good as previous years and they have been banged up? They just had all 5 of them together for the first time this time around. Unfortunately, it was against Micah and Green Bay. What about that part of this equation?
Well, I mean, I would say it's still a combination. I mean, there's times where the offensive line struggled, especially this past week. But yeah, I mean, the longer you take to process information, like if you can get back there and read it and get the ball out on time, that's always going to help your offensive line. So yes, I do believe when he's hanging on something too long on one side, and then we're asking him to come all the way back to the other side of the field and try to verify what's going on coverage-wise back there before you can throw it, that all takes longer. And taking longer, obviously, is going to put more pressure on the guys up front. So I don't think it's one or the other. I think there's different times where you can point to the offensive line, and other times you can point to holding the football too long as well. And so, again, to me, this game is played so fast that you have to speed it up any way possible. And that's where pure progression, or that's where some young quarterbacks struggle. We saw Caleb Williams last year, talked about it so much that he held the ball too long. And he was the most sacked quarterback in the NFL last year because he didn't get through his process fast enough. That, to me, is where JJ is right now for one reason or another, and it has to get better.
Hey, you made it all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Check us out every single day streaming live on Disney Plus and the ESPN app 12 to 3 Eastern.